Yeah, welcome everybody to today's mini conference of ProChain Solutions. My name is Ralf Wegener, and before starting, I'd like to thank ProChain Solutions for inviting me as guest speaker to today's mini conference. As you can see here on my cover slide, I will introduce or explain NXP's next chapter beyond Microsoft Project. What does that mean? You will learn in a couple of minutes. Before starting my presentation, I'd like to introduce my company, NXP Semiconductors. NXP Semiconductors is a public Dutch company with headquarters in Eindhoven, the Netherlands, with 32,000 talented team members all over the globe. One third of these 32,000 team members are working in and for research and development, and the same is true for me. So also I'm working for R&D within NXP Semiconductors. We are present in over 30 countries all over the globe, and our annual revenue is 12.3 billion US dollar. NXP Semiconductors has a history of experience and expertise of more than 60 years, and we actually hold 9,500 patent families. NXP Semiconductors is operating in various business areas. Most important and the biggest business unit in our company is automotive. We are also operating in the industrial and IoT area, mobile area, and in communication and infrastructure. I'm working for the automotive business, so let's finish my introduction of NXP Semiconductors with a short insight into our automotive business unit. So our market position is very strong in the automotive area. We are technology leader for automotive processors, for automotive applications processors, for automotive radio frequency components, for automotive digital signal processors, and for cross-domain processors. So this is a technology, as one can see, and we are holding number one application positions in for car radio, for secure car access, and in the in-vehicle networking. Regardless what type of car you are driving, the probability that you find not only one, but at least 10, 20, 30 semiconductors, chips of NXP in your car is almost 100%. Okay, let's continue with introduction of myself. As already said, my name is Ralf Wegener. I'm located in Hamburg, Germany, and within NXP, I'm working for the Shared Service Center, as it is called, Advanced Chip Engineering. So the ACE department within NXP is responsible for developing and validating hardware chips, actually, and to provide these chips mainly to the automotive business lines. I'm a member of the Project Management Office in the Advanced Chip Engineering organization. I'm holding a master degree of business engineering. I'm a critical chain project analyst. This is a title, my role in NXP, and I'm certified ProChain expert. I do have more than 20 years, in the meantime, one can say more than 25 years of project management experience, not only as a project management consultant, but also as a project manager. Coming to my presentation, to the agenda of my presentation, what am I going to present? I will start with a short introduction on ProChain system at NXP Semiconductors. So we'll introduce the evolution and the timeline. And the first part of my presentation will also explain the rationale for choosing Microsoft Project Online instead of ProChain Enterprise. Remember the title of my presentation, it's NXP's next chapter beyond Microsoft Project, and we indeed started working with Microsoft Project Online a long time ago, and I will shortly explain why we, at that point in time, we took the decision to go for Microsoft Project Online. This will be followed by explanation on our practical experience with Microsoft Project Online in the years 2019 to 2023. I will introduce the transition project that we eventually executed when we migrated from Project Online to Fusion Online. We'll highlight the achievements and the results that NXP Semiconductors actually achieved with Fusion Online. We'll then explain the strategic next steps for critical chain project management at NXP. And then finally, one slide on key conclusions and lessons learned by NXP with regard to Project Online, Fusion Online, and the ProChain system. If any questions, please ask these questions in the questions and answer session that will close my presentation today. Okay, let's start with the evolution and timeline for ProChain system at NXP Semiconductors. So everything started in 2018. At that point in time, NXP, or the leading business line, actually took the decision to run a pilot project with critical chain project management and utilizing the ProChain system. This pilot has been executed in 2019. After successful completion of the pilot project, has been decided to roll out critical chain project management and the ProChain system throughout NXP Semiconductors. This rollout has been done in the years 2020 up to 2022. And in 2023, decision has been taken to migrate from MS Project Online to Fusion Online. And since 2024, we are continuously expanding the usage of Fusion Online, means we are deploying more features, actually all features that are available. We are managing more projects, actually more than 100 projects in Fusion Online. And the number of users, of course, also increased since then. Coming back to the decision that has been taken end of 2019, you can see the timestamp here on the top right corner, Q4 2019. As already said, we executed a pilot project in 2019, and towards the end of the pilot project, decision has been taken to adopt the ProChain system. However, the tool landscape, the decision for tool landscape has been re-evaluated. During the pilot project, we utilized, of course, MS Project with the ProChain scheduler, and we have been using ProChain Enterprise. A ProChain PPS, so the MS Project add-in, was naturally classified as mandatory. So no doubt that ProChain PPS is a must-have. But ProChain Enterprise has been assessed as replaceable, and the alternative at that point in time, so end of 2019, was MS Project Online, or PWA. Key decision criteria at that point in time, number one, and most important for the final decision to go for Project Online, was the ability to integrate the system into the, at that point in time, planned information system, Power BI based, for project, pipeline, and resource management. So actually, the idea or the plan was to define, implement, and set up an information system to provide basically all type of information, regardless whether we are talking about project schedule or project plans, pipeline management, or resource information in one central information system, and that was and still is Power BI. And the ability to integrate into this information system was, let's say, higher with MS Project Online. The second decision criteria at that point in time have been cost, or license cost, actually. Yeah, based on the assessment that has been done end of 2019, MS Project Online was selected as a, let's call it, backbone system, replacing ProChain Enterprise. So this was the starting point. Let me show you a short overview on the system landscape, or we call it actually ecosystem. So we used MS Project with ProChain PPS, so the scheduler of ProChain solutions. We decided to use MS Project Online as server system or backbone system. I think since beginning of 2021, we have been using Stormboard as a digital whiteboard for network building. We have been using this setup that I just showed for more than 3 years. So starting beginning of 2020 and replacing it only mid of 2023. What have been our experiences with Microsoft Project Online? As one can see here, actually experiences were not that good. First of all, Project Online was not and is not compliant with the critical chain approach and with critical chain project management. Within our company, that turned out to hinder the deployment of critical chain project management. Second point, due to the, let's say, pure user interface and lack of features, significant customization was needed for NXP. Means we let third-party companies develop at least two components or features to better support critical chain project management in our company. And by this customized software, the total overall complexity did increase. As already said, the Project Online interface, user interface was weak and still is weak, and that led to a low user acceptance. So one can say MS Project with ProChain PPS has been used by our project managers. However, task managers and also project managers that were expected, actually enforced to use Project Online, for instance, to update their weekly task status, simply refused to do that, which led to the decision, as just described, to build external tools for capturing task updates, as an example. Complexity and constraints of the entire system led to architecture compromises. And finally, the expected cost savings, remember, cost have been one of the key decision criteria, did not materialize. So eventually, one could say the solution that we created, this ecosystem with MS Project Online in the background, actually the total cost have been higher than for the, let's say, the standard ProChain system ecosystem comprising MS Project, ProChain PPS, and ProChain Enterprise. So that means in 2023, we decided to at least at first evaluate Fusion Online. Fusion Online version 15 has been released by ProChain Solutions in end of 2022, and we immediately stepped in and were really enthusiastic when we saw Fusion Online for the first time. We set up a small project for migrating from Project Online to Fusion Online, starting with a blueprint. So basically, we created a project charter and defined the future ecosystem in detail. We did an exploration, two actions. Firstly, we executed Fusion Online trainings. These trainings have been provided by ProChain Solutions, and we picked up two projects as pilot projects to be planned and executed with Fusion Online. Then we realized and deployed the new ecosystem with Fusion Online as a backbone. And since, as already said, since 2024, we are running our Fusion Online-based system, and the legacy tools have been phased out within a time frame of about 6 months. And the entire NPI project portfolio is now managed using Fusion Online and the Fusion Desktop app. Only for your information, I don't want to bother you with details, but want to explain what we did in this transition project. Remember, one step was explore. So we basically assessed our, at that point in time, current system comprising Project Online, MS Project / ProChain PPS, and we had two, let's say, specific components, My Work and Masterlink, versus the Fusion Online-based ecosystem, basically comprising Fusion Online plus uh, MS Project / Fusion Desktop. These have been the factors or criteria: cost, system stability, system openness, future-proofness, user-friendliness and acceptance, functional scope, so basically critical chain process support, or you can say critical chain process compliance, and then maintenance and support effort required for these two um, scenarios. Let's call them scenarios. Outcome was that the Fusion Online based ecosystem has been significantly higher rated. You can see that here. So better with regard to system stability, much better with regard to future proofness, much better with regard to user friendliness and user acceptance. Of course, I did already mention this setup was not really critical chain compliant. And of course, Fusion Online is of course, critical chain project management compliant. And the maintenance and support effort, which was really a burden for our project online-based system, is also rated much better for the Fusion Online-based ecosystem. So what you can see here is score was 3.1. The score for the Fusion Online system, 4.1. That was number one. And the second one, we did do a survey using the project launch analysis template of ProChain to we executed this survey with the team members of the pilot projects and asked them for various criteria. So you can see the 8 criteria that we formulated upfront. And what one can see is all criteria have either, in best case, been rated similar or better or much better. And much better have been assessed the user interface, which was clearly laid out and much more easy to understand. Navigation through menus and data entry are direct and intuitive, also rated much higher for Fusion Online. The question, I am able to retrieve all necessary data and information for fulfilling my assignments, also rated higher, much higher. And finally, system efficiency supports and facilitates critical chain-based project management. So also this criteria number 8 rated much higher. And based on the assessment and the survey, we finally did a full-blown presentation to our management. I'm only sharing this evaluation summary slide. So highlights were the highly positive Fusion pilot results. 50% of the assessed areas have been improved by using Fusion Online. 100% retention. What does that mean? The teams, these two pilot teams that worked with Fusion Online during the pilot phase, did not return to the previous system. So they said, we stay here in Fusion Online system much better than what we had before. So therefore, 100% retention and growing adoption by additional project managers. So that means project managers who got in contact with these pilot project managers were really enthusiastic and said, oh, we also want to move from this project online-based system to Fusion Online. Opportunities, there are two things that, yeah, the first one was excluded from pilot Fusion pipeline. So in our previous or old ecosystem, we have been using an add-on, Masterlink it is called. This is a project online add-on, basically similar functionality as Fusion pipeline program scheduling. This has not been evaluated during the pilot projects. And limitation, this brings me back to this Power BI information or Power BI based information system. There was no and is no direct Power BI access to Fusion Online. That is let's say, the only, from at that point in time, NXP's point of view, a weak point of Fusion Online. So Power BI can be easily connected to MS Project Online. So that means you can grab all data that are available in Project Online and can make them available, can use them for data analysis, for charts, and so on in Power BI. At that point in time, we identified two, let's say, workarounds. One was use Project Online as intermediate source for feeding Power BI, or you make use of Fusion API-based interface to um, feed Power BI with Fusion Online data. The final recommendation finally to our management was let's migrate to Fusion Online and let's start immediately but with a step-by-step approach. And this recommendation has been approved and was the start of the migration project. This is a simple picture explaining the new system. So as already said, so we simply phased out MS Project Online and replaced it by Fusion Online. We are still using MS Project, at least until end of 2025, still using MS Project. At a certain point in time, ProChain PPS has been replaced by Fusion Desktop application. And during the ramp up, the rollout of Fusion Online, we also started to make use of Fusion Pipeline program scheduling, to say. We started to, or we have already been using Stormboard. This has not been changed. So until beginning of 2026, all our projects used Stormboard for network building. These networks have been downloaded to MS Project and then eventually, after finalizing the schedule, checked into Fusion Online. And remember my previous slide. Here I said there's no direct Power BI access to Fusion Online. And we identified two options. And starting point of them was Project Online as intermediate source to feed Power BI. So what we did, at least for a couple of weeks, we loaded or saved the Fusion Online plans into MS Project Online via MS Project. So we opened the plans in MS Project and then saved them into MS Project Online. And by this trick, the data became immediately available to Power BI. At a certain point in time, we said, no, that doesn't make much sense. First of all the reports and the charts that have been generated in Power BI have hardly been used. There was actually only little reason to open Power BI and to check for charts. Why not? Because all, let's say, the relevant charts have also been available in Fusion Online, and the user interface of Fusion Online is much better than the user interface of Power BI. So this was a starting point, the idea to further continue feeding planning data into Power BI. But as said, I think after six weeks or so, we stopped and said, no, we don't need that. We don't do that anymore. It's only effort with little or no added value. Achievements since then. So as said, we started Fusion on or rollout of Fusion Online beginning of 2024, 2 years ago. And since then, so NXP achieved a lot with this new ecosystem based on Fusion Online. Let me start with the number of users. So this is a chart showing the number of users over timeline. As said, in 2023, we ran two pilots, number of users not that big. Then by end of 2023, we started to deploy and roll out Fusion Online. And what you can see is a continuous growth of the number of users. As of today, we do have 465 active users in Fusion Online, and this is equal to the number of licenses that NXP Semiconductors, as of today, holds. So this is currently our limitation. Can most likely will be extended next year, latest next year. But at the moment, we are working with or accepting this limit, actually. What we do is we continuously monitor the usage of Fusion Online by users. And if a user didn't log in for typically 1 quarter, 3 months, we deactivate the user account to make the license available to users who actually need access to Fusion Online. But most important, what you see is the number of users did continuously grow, and I'm very confident that beginning of next year, you will see the number of Fusion Online users further growing in NXP Semiconductors. Number of projects. So in this chart, you see the active projects. So the green bars show the number of active projects, and the gray bars show the number of deactivated or completed projects, one can say. And remember, we started our rollout in 2024. By end of 2024, we had 18 active projects in the system. As of today, we do have 142 active R&D projects in Fusion Online, and these 142 projects are managed by Critical Chain. So the project managers indeed apply Critical Chain project management and apply the ProChain system. So these are quantitative metrics. Then a rollout of new features. So Fusion Online came with a lot of features that were not available in MS Project Online and which were very, or still are very helpful and useful for NXP semiconductors. And whatever feature became available, we typically made and still make use of these features. So on top, I added a feature which has been released recently, so end of 2025. It's the diagram view. And in NXP semiconductors, remember my previous slide, we have been using Stormboard as the tool for network building with a couple of disadvantages. So when you create a network in in Stormboard, you have to make use of this little macro to transfer your network into MS Project at first. Stormboard has a couple of other weaknesses. So for instance, you cannot assign resources to tasks. You can only add an assignee, but it's impossible to assign resources or roles to specific tasks. And there are a couple of other weaknesses. Oh, and finally, remember, NXP Semiconductors is always looking on cost. For Stormboard usage, we have to pay a license fee. That made the decision easy to switch from Stormboard to the Fusion Online diagram view. So after release of the diagram view end of last year, NXP began using Fusion diagram view for network building, replacing Stormboard. That is listed here on top. In Fusion Online, one can define custom fields to enable company-specific reporting. And we are making extensive use of custom fields in Fusion Online, mainly as written here, to enable project-specific reporting. So we are creating attributes, for instance, for phases, for functions, for IP blocks, we have a specific item which is called XPI, XPO, so cross-project dependencies, and also to monitor these cross-project inputs, outputs, we are using custom fields. So there's a long list of custom fields and that we did define, and we are continuously adding custom fields and use these custom fields, particularly for reporting. Interfacing of Fusion Online with other systems. So in our case, Jira via API. Fusion Online enables the creation of API keys. So we can, and we do actually, open an API interface to feed, in this case, feed Fusion Online with data from Jira. I listed here two examples. First, upload and update of task from Jira to Fusion Online. This is a use case that has been implemented in our company, not used by all projects, but by some. If projects are really working in two systems, Fusion Online, and are using at the shop floor level Jira, it's possible to update the task in Fusion Online, to update the task in Jira and to interface via this API the task information or task status information into Fusion Online. Another example is download of my task commands for further processing in Excel. A nice application that one of our project managers did create using the API interface. Not an IT specialist, it's actually an R&D project manager who is making or use of the API interface. He introduced in his project, let's say, a convention for task comments, and these task comments are loaded into Excel and processed into Excel via a script, and he is using in order to download the data from Fusion Online into Excel, he's using the API interface. Automated report generation, also something that is indirectly enabled with also with the API feature. So using the API interface in cooperation with artificial intelligence, in our case, mainly Microsoft's 365 Copilot, it's possible to create high-quality summary reports with little effort. Also something that we are doing in our company. And then finally, planning, scheduling, and analyzes in Fusion Online instead of MS Project. This is something that has been started. So we do have project managers who simply don't use MS Project anymore, but do the planning, the scheduling, and the analysis of critical chain and variability chain directly in Fusion Online instead of MS Project. As written here, meanwhile, Fusion Online provides all the features required by project managers to plan, schedule, and analyze their projects. And as a result, more and more project managers in our company are no longer using MS Project. These are 5 achievements under the chapter of, no, under the header of a rollout of new features that we actually did until now, so beginning of 2026. Okay, the next category of is related to R&D performance. So for NXP semiconductors, reduction of the NPI throughput time is a key success factor. So we always have to and want to reduce our development times. So the throughput time of new product introduction projects. This is a primary goal within NXP semiconductors, and there are a couple of, let's say, items, components that help to achieve the target that has been set by NXP Semiconductors management. And one of the components to achieve this is critical chain project management. The data that we are actually continuously monitoring data, collecting data, and also analyzing data. And the data show that consistently shorter complexity increases. So that means the time to tape out, this is, let's say, a key milestone within a semiconductors development project, has consistently been reduced. And this, even so, the complexity of our project is continuously growing. And I tried to visualize this effect here. So this brown column shows the average throughput time from PDA milestone to tape out for non-critical chain managed projects. And the number is 67 weeks, actually. And this is the average throughput time for NPI projects that are managed by using critical chain and the ProChain system. The duration or throughput time has been reduced from 67 to 62 weeks. One can say, well, that doesn't impress me much, only 5 weeks less. True. So the absolute number is not or reduction number is not that high, but in parallel, each project in NXP Semiconductors for each project, we calculate a complexity number, which is an indicator, or basically is indicating the complexity of this project. And what one can see is that the complexity of our NPI projects is continuously growing. So projects become more complex. The systems that we are going to, or that we are developing, are becoming more complex. And despite growing complexity, so here you see the number for critical chain managed. Let's say the new projects which are managed with critical chain number is 0.37. Don't want to introduce this complexity factor, but it's an indicator for the complexity of the project. And the complexity, the average complexity of the non-critical projects was 0.296. So summary, the complexity did increase and is still increasing. And Nevertheless, despite growing complexity, we reduce the throughput time. And one contributor is critical chain project management that we extensively use in NXP semiconductors. Next category, competence enhancement. So Fusion Online has significantly enhanced first and second level user support features, well, I have to say. What does that mean? So typically in previous times, whenever a user had a problem, he called or contacted one of the critical chain experts like me or my colleagues. Fusion Online comes with an AI-powered free text inquiry. So that means the user can, and actually they do, enter his question or his problem into a free text field and can ask Fusion Online help for an AI-powered answer. And this feature is really strong. And the good thing for us is it reduces our workload with regard to first and second level support. Um, and the second thing is within Fusion Online, users typically do have access to the ProChain University. So it's a set of comprehensive video guidance across key critical chain sub-processes, and on top, 28 targeted tutorial videos addressing specific critical chain concepts. And these videos are available, accessible to our users on top of the AI-powered free text inquiries. Looks simple, but for us, so the critical chain experts and professionals in NXP Semiconductors, has a significant advantage. It indeed reduces the workload and leaves us more time to focus on our, let's say, key responsibilities. So, for instance, preparing, facilitating network building workshops, supporting project managers at the beginning beginning of the advanced phase, and executing training sessions and this stuff. Yeah, key benefits for NXP semiconductors, so kind of summary slide. With regard to the planning process, so by rolling out Fusion Online and making use of the, let's say, the strong features of Fusion Online, we have or could reduce the network building effort by more than 20%. The networks that are created in Fusion Online, or the quality of the networks, is higher. I already mentioned a couple of items. So, for instance, only a simple example, the fact that resources can be assigned during network build, and that the resource names that are assigned to specific tasks are controlled. So we typically define then resources in advance, and then the network building team members assign resources that have been defined upfront. And in store-bought, resources could not be defined and could not be assigned. And there are a couple of other strengths of the diagram view feature, which results in a higher network quality. So next is the advanced phase, or in our company, it's called execution phase. So the analysis and reporting process has been accelerated by eliminating redundant process steps, and the project status reporting process could be standardized and has been accelerated. I already mentioned a couple of small items. Fact is, project status reports can and are generated faster with less effort by our project managers. And then finally, remember my previous slide, support process. So we call it, for us, at least it's kind of overhead. The support workload for ProChain experts has been reduced, and enabling us to focus on our core responsibilities. Brings me to the next steps. So I've been talking a lot about Fusion Online and tools and features. Nevertheless, I want to make clear that our focus is not solely on tools and user interfaces and tool features, but our most important focus at this point in time is to deploy the critical chain work norms and fostering what is called a relay race mindset. Um, so we want and we will establish and reinforce a relay race mindset across all NPI projects. That's number one focus for 2026. We want to create a shared understanding that we operate in an intensively competitive environment and that we, in this case, are the project teams, must leverage Fusion Online to its full potential to win this race. And we are actively promoting and enforcing work rules and best practices across all NPI projects. So these are the what we call soft factors in project management. Um, but here there is in our company still room for improvement with regard to the soft factors. Yeah, I typically in our internal presentations and trainings, we typically use the picture of the progress loop and the relay race picture to make clear what our target eventually is when we are talking about team effort and let's say the will to win the race. Critical chain project management and NXP, there are also a couple of tool and feature related items that we are currently addressing. Number one is establishing the Fusion diagram view as the standard for network building sessions. So we still have every now and then discussions with project managers who did already use Stormboard since 2 or 3 years. I used to Stormboard, but we actually push and force all teams and all project managers to use the Fusion diagram view. We are executing continuously trainings on this feature, not only for network building, but also for to enable project managers to do um, network analysis and schedule analysis during execution. We want to, or we will gradually reduce the use of Microsoft Project by project managers. As written here, a limited number of Fusion desktop features are not yet available in Fusion Online. So for instance, network analysis was one of these features, or is still one of the features that is not available in Fusion Online, but is intensively used by our project managers. What I understood from ProChain Solutions is these limited number of features will become available in Fusion Online soon, network analysis very soon, and as soon as these gaps or deltas are not uh, available anymore. So when all these features are available in Fusion Online, we can and will reduce the use of Microsoft Project to almost zero. Number three is also related to number one, promote the use of diagram view for network analysis to enable faster identification of project acceleration opportunities during execution. Further roll out of Fusion Pipeline. So when I'm talking about Fusion Pipeline, I'm referring to the program scheduling feature as the standard for programs consisting of multiple sub-projects. And then finally, promote and provide training on the export CSV feature to enable project managers and task managers to perform their own data analysis in Excel. So the critical chain experts and professionals in NXP semiconductors know this export CSV feature very well, and we are using it extensively. Mm, with regard to the project managers, depends a lot on the individuals. So some project managers know it, make use of it. Other project managers need additional training or training at all to um, be able to be enabled to use this feature for data analysis. Key conclusions and lessons learned. That is my final slide. So key conclusions. So the transition from Microsoft Project Online to Fusion Online in 2023 and rollout in 2024 was a significant catalyst for further establishing critical chain project management within NXP research and development. Remember this number of project and number of users chart. The Fusion Online user interface is intuitive and easy to use, resulting in high user acceptance among project managers and task managers. That was, remember, a very, very weak point in Project Online. So the majority of task managers and project managers simply refused to log in to Project Online. And this is completely different in Fusion Online. all project managers as well as task managers are enjoying the Fusion Online user interface and are using the Fusion Online interface either to update their task status for task managers or to plan and track and analyze the project schedule. This is for project managers. Data analysis capabilities are significantly stronger than in Project Online, which has driven high acceptance at the management level. So our managers are always interested in data. In Project Online, even so, the initial idea was to make Project Online data available in Power BI. Was, let's say, a strong point, end of 2019. But Project Online is not critical chain compliant, and a lot of data that are necessary to analyze, for instance, a critical chain or a variability chain, are not available in Project Online. So in MS Project, you see these data. In Fusion Online, they are also available. When you save a project plan, critical chain project plan to Project Online, a lot of critical chain data are simply not available to be accessed by Power BI. And therefore, this fourth bullet is very important for us. Fusion Online has simplified many project management process steps already indicated or described before, thereby accelerating overall execution. Lessons learned, I only added 2 lessons learned. So regularly conducted Fusion Online training programs addressing new features are a key prerequisite for sustainable adoption and widespread use. What we do, or what we started already 3 years ago, we created what is called critical chain user group. So all project managers that finalized the QSP training are automatically member of this critical chain user group. And every quarter, so 4 times a year, we pick up a specific topic and do a short training session on this topic or this feature. Example, diagram view. So diagram view has been released end of last year. The next critical chain user group meeting is scheduled for end of May. And the topic for this meeting is the Fusion Online diagram view and the way it can be used, or it must be used for network building and for network analyzing this during execution. Core group of critical chain affine project managers is essential to continuously test and validate how Fusion features can be leveraged for project acceleration. So in our organization or in our company, it's not only responsibility of the critical chain or ProChain experts and professionals to analyze, evaluate, and deploy features. We do have a couple of, let's say, very project managers with in-depth critical chain knowledge and also in-depth knowledge on Fusion Online. And these project managers often run ahead of us, so the internal critical chain consultants, and simply test and validate features and check how can I use this new feature or this feature to accelerate project execution. Recommendation: identify, enable, and incentivize these project managers to act as role models. This is the case in our organization, and promoters. So typically, these project managers normally are invited as speakers or guest speakers in the quarterly critical chain user group learning sessions, as we call them. Yeah, that's my presentation. Brings me to the final chapter, questions and answers. Are there any questions regarding critical chain project management at NXP, regarding the usage of Fusion Online, regarding specific features of Fusion Online, or any concerns or other feedback?